Hi, my name is Tiffany Allen, and I'll be talking to you all about plastics and the harms to people's health and the environment. So, what are plastics? Well, plastics are a synthetic material and are human made, and they do not occur in naturally like wood or iron. Plastics are created in laboratories by scientists, and plastics are a combination of chemicals, and these chemicals are known as hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen. And plastics are known as polymers. Polymers are molecules built around chains of atoms, carbon atoms, and polymers are long chains of particles linked together. How are plastics made? Well, oil and gas companies had an excess of fracking oil and didn't know what to do with it. So they extracted ethane from the fracked oil to make plastics. Ethane is a component of the Marcellus Shale natural gas. Ethane is then treated with heating in a process called cracking, which turns the ethane into ethylene. Natural gas is mostly methane. Some reserves contain other hydrocarbons. Natural gas liquids, NGLs, include ethane, which is a raw material used for manufacturing and to produce finished petrochemicals such as plastics. These materials combined together create different polymers. So how does plastics affect people's health? Well, I have an infographic right here to show the direct exposure. First, it goes through extraction and transportation, then refining and manufacturing, then it goes to consumer use, and then waste management, and lastly, environmental exposure. And I just want to highlight each one of those direct exposures. So, extraction and transport. 99% of plastics comes from fossil fuels, and the extraction of oil and gas, particularly hydrogen fracking for natural gas, also known as fracking, releases an array of toxic substances into the air, water, and often in significant volumes. 170 fracking chemicals are used and known to cause health impacts, including cancer, neurotoxicity, reproductive and development toxicity, and impairment of the immune system. Redefining and manufacture. Transforming fossil fuels into plastic resides and additives releases carcinogenic and other highly toxic substances into the air. Documented effects of exposures to these substances include impairment of the nervous system, reproductive and developmental problems, cancers, leukemia, genetic impacts, low birth weight as a result. And industry workers and neighboring communities are the ones who are at greatest risk and are dealing with chronic and acute exposure. Next is consumer products and packaging. Use of plastics lead to ingestion and or inhalation of large amounts of both microplastics and hundreds of toxic substances with known or subjected carcinogenic, developmental, or endocrine disrupting impacts. Waste management. All plastic management technologies, including incineration, co-incineration, gasification, and pyrolysis, result in the release of toxic metals such as lead and mercury, other organic substances, acid and gases, and particulate matter through the inhalation of contaminated air, direct contact with contaminated soil or water, and ingestion of foods that were grown in the environment that were coated with these substances. And lastly, plastic in the environment. Once the plastic reaches the environment in the form of macro or microplastic, it contains and accumulates in food chains through agricultural soils, terrestrial and aquatic food chains, and water supply. Microplastics that enter the human body via direct exposures through ingestion or inhalation can lead to an array of health effects such as inflammation, genotoxicity, oxidation, stress, apoptosis, and necrotosis, which are linked to cancer, cardiovascular diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic inflammation, autoimmune diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, and stroke. So right here I have the Break Free from Plastics Pollution Act. And with this act, I just wanted you all to sign the act and to let your congressperson know that plastic production disproportionately affects communities of color, low-income communities, and indigenous communities by polluting the air, water, and soil. Toxic chemicals in packaging and products cause irreplaceable damage to the environment, wildlife, and their own health. Plastic disposal via incineration and landfill harms frontline and baseline communities. Meanwhile, in the U.S. continues to export 225 shipping containers of plastic waste per day to countries with limited or non-existent waste management systems. Plastic is an environmental justice issue, and the government has a responsibility to protect people and the planet. So I have here just a fact sheet to show what the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act covers. And that's all I have. Thank you.